People talk a lot about telling your story and about why it's so important to tell your story. And the truth is, your story has so much power. Like, there's so much truth in why we need to be telling our story and sharing our journey and our experience, especially in where we are in today's world with so many people feeling disconnected, so many people feeling like nobody's listening, so many people feeling like they're all alone in this journey. I can tell you that I have been surprised and I have seen how surprised other people are when we share little bits and pieces of our story and we realize how connected we truly are, how alike we are in so many different ways, and how truly similar we are in the experiences, but more importantly, in the emotions of what we're going through. A lot of times when we tell our story, we tell our story in a timeline way. When I was 3 years old, this happened. And then when I was 5 years old, this happened. And then when I was 15, this happened. And although it's good because it allows for us to give some kind of like framework as to where we were and what we were doing, a lot of times we share a very filtered version of our story, what I like to call filtered. We tell the story that is curated, the story that we think people can handle. It's the story that our family has approved of. It's a story that we know that we're not going to be judged as harshly if we tell this piece of the story. It's the story that, my parents are going to be okay with me telling this part because it doesn't tell our family's dirty secrets. The truth is that we all live with secrets. We all have things that we try to hide from people, that we even try to hide from people in our own household. Like, we will go to work, there's almost different versions of ourselves that are out there. And we rarely give ourselves the opportunity to show up 100% complete. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to be whole because we're living in this fear of the judgment and the guilt or the shame or whatever it is for us that holds us back from giving the truth of our story. There's a saying, truth will set you free. And I truly believe that it's your truth, my truth, that will set us free. The minute that you begin to own your story, the good, the bad, and the ugly is the moment that you begin to give yourself freedom, freedom to show up whole, freedom to be more confident, freedom to say no when you really want to say no instead of always having to say yes to make everybody else happy. It's the moment that you give yourself freedom to say, hey, this doesn't serve me, and I no longer want to have this, either this environment, these people, this relationship, this experience. I no longer want this in my life, and I'm going to create something different. The moment that you own your story is the moment that you give yourself freedom. It's the freedom that you see from other people that you look and you're like, damn, how do they do that? Dang, how are they? Why are they always so happy in there? Most of the time, it's because either one, they're either living, they're telling you part of the story that they want you to hear, or they're truly living a life that brings them joy because they're owning their truth. I used to get frustrated when I would see people who I kind of thought were jerks because they were so brutally honest. They were living their truth and they really didn't care about other people. And it used to bother me. And I used to be like, why am I so irritated by that? But what I realized, it was their level of authenticity, it was their level of truth, it was their level of, listen, I don't, mm, if you like it or not. I'm going to live my truth, and here is my truth. And they would put it out there. And that would bother my spirit, that would bother my soul because they were able to live their truth. And I was living a life of filtered, of curated, of worrying about everybody else. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but I know that there's somebody out there right now that wishes that they could tell their story, that wishes they could stand in their truth, that wishes they could go through and just be like, listen, this is me. The good, the bad, and especially the ugly. When we tell our story, it's not the timeline version, but it's telling the experience. You see, when we think about our stories, there's an experience that happens. And when that experience, whatever that experience may be, when that experience happens, it creates a result in our life. And we think that because of this experience, that this is the only way that it's going to be. For example, um, in elementary school, I used to get in trouble for talking too much. And so, because I would talk too much, I would stop talking. I would stop raising my hand. I would stop offering my opinion in there. And so, as a result of that, as a result of stop talking, I became shy. Now, that's not my full truth, because Lord knows I know I like to talk. But for some people, it's that holding back, I got in trouble for talking too much. And so, therefore, I'm not going to talk. And so now I'm living a life as an adult as being shy. Another example of it was, I was bullied in school, or I was teased in school because I got a wrong answer. And so, therefore, I'm afraid to share, or I'm afraid to raise my hand and suggest an answer. And so, therefore, I don't ever raise my hand for anything anymore. I wait to be called on. I wait for the opportunity to show up. I wait and I wait instead of going out and getting what you deserve. We think that there's that because of an experience, we have to have a particular outcome. Because I was touched inappropriately, I no longer want to have any level of intimacy with anybody else. And so when anybody begins to get close, I shut down. Therefore, I'm not in a relationship. I'm single, and I'm not wanting to date anybody because I don't want to be touched. The event. So there's an equation. And I want you to write this down. If you don't have a piece of paper out, get a piece of paper out. I want you to write this down. I don't have a marker here, so I'm going to do it like this. E plus blank equals O. So write that down. E plus blank equals O. So this is an equation, and in this equation, there's only one thing that we can control in this equation. So there's an event, there's an experience, and then over here is the outcome. So I was bullied in school about getting an answer wrong, and so therefore I don't talk anymore. I was touched inappropriately at one time, and therefore I no longer want to have intimacy or date anybody. I was cheated on in a relationship, and so therefore I don't trust anybody anymore, and now I'm not going to pursue anything. I just don't trust anybody. I have a hard time trusting. We believe that we have to go from the event directly to the outcome. But the truth is that there's one part of this equation that we can change. And that is R. E plus R equals O. The R is how we respond to the incident. How you respond to the incident is going to change the outcome. So if you look at your life, if you look at your story and you see where you are and you don't like the outcome of what this event is, then you have to look at how are you responding to this story? How are you responding to the experience? Because when you change how you're responding, you're going to change the outcome here. If that makes sense to you, I want you to type in E plus R equals O. E plus R equals O. There's an event plus how you respond, which equals the outcome. Your story is the way, the minute that you begin to change the way you respond to a situation, you move from being the victim of your story, you move from being in a space of, this story just happened to you controlling the impact of your story. When you own your story and when you tell your story and you share your story, you get control. You see in the description of this that there's power in your story and you control all of it. Now, is it difficult? Heck yes. Is it hard and require you to have some very difficult conversations with people at times? Yes. But there's freedom on the other side. There's the ability to show up as one whole person instead of going to church and only having the church person that shows up that's really good at praying and they're singing and they're in service. And then you go home and then you're acting one way with your family. And then you go to work and you have a different person, different persona. You're like, okay, let me put on my business hat now. Okay, let me put on my family hat now. Okay, let me put on my brother sister hat now. Now let me put on my son daughter hat now. Instead of wearing all those hats, just wear the one hat, and that's your truth, who you are. But that comes from owning your truth. That comes from owning who you are. It comes from you taking control of your story and how your story is being told. So many people need to hear your experience, especially right now. Listen, what's all these things that are happening on the news? Full transparency, I was totally thrown off and went into this really dark place in hearing about Twitch. Ellen DeGeneres' DJ. I only got to meet him one time, but just the joy and the love and the fact that here's this man who, in our perception, has this amazing life and has a beautiful family and has the finances and has opportunity and is bringing joy to so many people, but yet he was suffering in loneliness. He was fighting his own demons, the same that we do. We just never talk about it. We never give each other a safe space, especially as men. Especially as men, we're not given the space to talk about emotions. The only thing that we can express that's acceptable in society is anger. Oh yeah, all right. Like it's allowed. But us as men, we have so many more emotions, the same emotions that women have. The hurt, the frustration, the feeling of loneliness, the pressure of not feeling weak in front of other people, the idea that knowing that other people are watching and judging. We all have those same emotions, but we never talk about it. And so we feel lonely. We go into a hole. We go into a place of nobody's going to understand. And quite honestly, some of us are walking around thinking, well, nobody's going to care. Nobody wants to hear my mess. I'm sure they got their own mess. But the truth is, we need to hear it. And the more that you begin to share your story, the more that you begin to own your story is the moment that you give yourself freedom and you open up the possibility for somebody else. Gosh dang it, tell your story to heal somebody else because you never know who's watching you. You never know who's waiting. You never know who needs to hear, wow, they really went through that. Wow, they really think of that. The truth is that the minute you begin to own your story and you take ownership of it and you begin to get control over it. And NLP, they call it reframing your story. You get to step in a space of what were the lessons of that story, of that experience? What did I learn? What did I gain? How are things different? What was the gift that came wrapped in sandpaper? Like, you like, it's like one of those gifts where you're like, damn, it sucked to go through it, but now that I'm on the other side, I look back and one of the things that I realized for myself is that I have built so many other people's dreams and their visions, and I always put myself last. I was like, if I have enough time, I'm gonna do dot dot dot, and guess what? There was never enough time. And at certain moments, I would feel almost a level of resentment, but I put myself there. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I can look at it and be like, huh, what was the gift that came from that? Like, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about business? What did I learn about, boundaries? What was the gift that came in that sandpaper, that gift that was wrapped in sandpaper, that crappy situation that all of a sudden now, all right, maybe it wasn't so bad. Owning your story puts you in control. Simple. It puts you in the driver's seat. Owning your story creates healing. Owning your story creates possibility. Owning your story teaches you how to forgive. Owning your story shows you what you want to tolerate and what you no longer want to tolerate. Nothing, the things that don't serve you. Owning your story gives you a new level of understanding, gives you a new level of clarity. Owning your story creates your freedom. For the next 29 days, today's day one. For the next 29 days, we're going to be talking about story. We're going to be talking about what power each of the story has. How do you identify what is my story? How do I tell my story? Why should I share my story? Who needs to hear my story? It's a journey of getting back together and becoming whole, creating what we like to call a DTDT life, of going out and just, as it says right there, going out and doing that. So I want to invite you to join me on this journey every day, 15 minutes. Bring your notepad, bring your paper, and I want to hear from you. Yes, yes, Anne, owning your story equals freedom. Yes, Chris, E plus R equals O. Brandon, yes, I love it. The boy writing the book on EG. Yes, I remember you, Brandon. Yes. So I want to invite you to join me. I want to hear from you. I'm going to live in the comments. What was the value out of this conversation? What did you take away? Put it inside of the chat. For some of you guys, you're going to hear about the opportunity to join me in Las Vegas, March 6th to the 10th for DTDT Live. I can't wait. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. If you want to find out about it more, you're like, Pat, I can't wait. You can go to DTDT event, DTDT, like David Tom event.com, and find out. Now the website, we're changing it because we changed the experience. It's going to be super dope. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but you're welcome to go to that page if you want to get some information now, as well as the early bird tickets pricing on that. But otherwise, I want to hear from you. What was the value that you got out of this conversation? What do you feel that you need more of in order to tell your story? Like, let me know what's your biggest challenge in telling your story or owning your story. That's the question that I want to hear. What's your biggest challenge? Listen, I'm your brother in this journey. I'm sharing with you the journey that I've been going through. Most of you guys know that I began this journey to Phoenix about a year ago, and it was on March 1st, 2020, at the age of 44 years old, that I first came out publicly and shared the truth of my story and gave myself the freedom to show up 100%. And I want that for you. I want you to win bigger. I want you to go to bed happy. I want you to dream more wild than you've ever dreamed before. I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and be happy. Smile at yourself. Give yourself a wink. That's what this is about. This is not a new year, new you, because guess what? No matter where you are, there you are. All of you. So own it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll see you tomorrow.